Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Maya, a very short introduction. By Matthew Restel and Amara Solari. Narrated by Tim Campbell. Chapter 1. Creating the Maya. The Maya forged the greatest society in the history of the ancient Americas, and one of the great societies in human history. For thousands of years they have lived, and continue to live, in the region that today comprises southern Mexico and its Yucatan Peninsula, Guatemala, Belize, northwestern Honduras, and western El Salvador. Long before contact with Europeans, Maya communities built spectacular cities with large, well-fed populations. They mastered the visual arts and developed a sophisticated writing system that recorded extraordinary knowledge in calendrics, mathematics, and astronomy. The Maya achieved all this without area-wide centralized control. There was never a single unified Maya state or empire, but always numerous evolving ethnic groups speaking distinct Mayan languages. When Europeans invaded the Maya region, it comprised dozens of city-states or kingdoms. Spaniards subsequently carved out colonies in the 16th and 17th centuries that failed to include or unite the whole region, and in the early 21st century it remains divided by modern national boundaries. The Maya have also always been divided geographically, because the area's three major regions feature highly contrasting environments, from the flat, arid, riverless limestone peninsula in the north, to the hilly tropical rainforest of the center, to the volcanic highlands of the south. Yet something definable, unique, and endlessly fascinating, what we call Maya culture, has clearly existed for millennia. The Maya are therefore worth our attention for all these reasons, and because they pose a riddle. Since Europeans appeared on their shores soon after 1500, Maya communities and their cultural traditions have suffered systematic destruction and oppression by outsiders. Yet in recent centuries, this outside world has devoted considerable attention to uncovering and understanding Maya civilization and history. As a result, the Maya are shrouded in mystery, an object of popular fascination, greatly misunderstood and yet heavily studied. Early in the emergence of the professional study of the Maya, scholars divided ancient Maya history, that is, Maya history before the arrival of Europeans, into three broad periods: the pre-classic, sometimes referred to as the formative, the classic, and the post-classic. As the terminology applies, this classification was based on an evolutionary model that posited that the classic period Maya were more sophisticated in terms of their culture, religion, and political system than the Maya who lived before and after. Within this model, the pre-classic period is understood as a time of foundational development, and the post-classic as a time of cultural decay. Modern research shows this model to be misguided. Some Mayanists now refer to the period more or less comprising the pre-classic and classic as the Miocene, the Maya-specific version of the global early Anthropocene era of 3000 BC to 1000 CE. Nonetheless, the traditional periodization of Maya history is a well-established custom, and we therefore outline it here. Mayanists call their subjects the Maya or the Mayas, restricting the adjective Mayan to their languages. Those terms often require qualification because there are roughly 30 Maya ethnic groups. Therefore, where possible, Mayanists refer more specifically to ethnic groups, such as the Yucatec Maya or the Kachika Maya, or to larger groupings such as the Quichean Maya or the Maya of Highland Guatemala. All such groups are defined by their languages, that is, by the approximately 30 Mayan languages that survived into the modern period. There were likely more than 30 at the point of first contact with Spaniards. Most hieroglyphic inscriptions of the Classic period were probably in languages from the Choloid language group, primarily Classic Choltean, the ancestral language of today's Chorti, now a tiny language area on the Guatemalan-Honduran border. The largest language area, with the most speakers historically and in the early 21st century, is the Yucatan Peninsula, not coincidentally the flattest region of the Maya world, with almost no mountains and rivers to divide people from each other. Its Mayan language is Yucatec, with a few other Yucatecan languages spoken at the peninsula's base, most notably Itzay and Mopan. Periods of Maya history. The major periods of ancient Maya history are typically subdivided into shorter periods, along with approximate Western dates. We have added periods leading up to the present. Dates are CE unless otherwise indicated, and are approximate, even when they appear specific. For example, 825 or 1520, marking a point around which changes outweighed continuities. Archaic period, 8000 to 2000 BCE. Pre-classic formative, 2000 to 250 BCE. Early Preclassic, 2000 to 1000 BCE. Middle Preclassic, 1000 to 300 BCE. Late Preclassic, 300 BCE to 250 CE. Classic Period, 250 to 950. Early Classic, 250 to 600. Late Classic, 600 to 825. Terminal Classic, 825 to 950. Post-Classic, 950 to 1520. Early Post-Classic, 950 to 1250. Late Post-Classic, 1250 to 1520. Early Modern Colonial, 1520 to 1820. Contact Conquest, 1520 to 1550. Colonial, 1550 to 1820. Modern, 1820 to present. Themes and Mysteries. During the course of our chronological coverage of the cultural, political, and religious history of the Maya, we emphasize 5 themes. The first of these themes is Maya identity. The people we call Maya never thought of themselves as such. Before the broader application of the word starting in the 19th century, Maya was an obscure term restricted to a region of Yucatan. So, what was the self-identity of the people we call Maya? How did Maya civilization come to be invented, and why is that invention useful? As 2 archaeologists put it, the category of Maya is a fiction from which deeper realities emerge. The second theme is polity, or city-state political culture. If there was never a Maya empire, despite the fact that Spanish colonists and modern scholars often claimed there had been, how were Maya polities conceived and constructed? What was the daily life like, both at the center and on the margins of those polities? For most of Maya history, those questions apply to the millennia before European contact, but they also apply to the centuries since contact, adjusted to the realities of multiple intrusions into the Maya world. For the early modern and modern periods, then, the question becomes, how have Maya communities persisted? Be they villages and regions where Mayas have lived for millennia, or diasporic families far from the Mayan area. The Maya have suffered numerous colonizations, yet their history in the post-contact era is not simply one of victimization. It is also the continuation of the pre-colonial Maya story of adaptation, survival, and the pursuit of local solutions. The third theme is cosmovision and the world beyond. How did the Maya perceive the larger outside world, ranging from foreign visitors and invaders to the supernatural and the celestial universe? Related to that theme is our fourth, artistic expression. How did the Maya reflect their world beliefs in the material objects they carved, painted, wrote, and built? One of the most alluring and captivating aspects of Maya civilization is its vibrantly visual nature. Is it fair to say that the Maya lived and live in a world of art? Our fifth theme is that of Maya mysteries. Not why the Maya are mysterious, but why have they been so widely perceived as such? There has long been a preoccupation in the West with the notion that Maya civilization is a riddle to be solved. The reasons for that perspective, part of what makes Maya history so compelling, all relate to the twin phenomena of disappearance and discovery. Beginning with Christopher Columbus in 1502, the ancient Maya have repeatedly been discovered by the West. The finding of the people and places of the Maya area, either living or long gone, continued with Spanish conquistadors, with the gentlemen explorers of the 19th century, and with the pioneering archaeologists of modern Maya studies. It continues in the early 21st century with the sensationalization of new findings by each generation of Maya scholars. Closely related is the belief that the Maya disappeared, taking their secret knowledge with them, an idea distorted and perpetuated by misunderstandings of scholarly theories on the phenomenon of the collapse at the end of the Classic period. In the 9th and 10th centuries, city-states in the central region of the Maya area experienced changes that were in some cases sudden and dramatic. As a result, some abandoned cities remain deserted ruins, or partially restored tourist sites, to this day. But the Maya did not disappear, and their civilization did not collapse. Likewise, in the 16th and 17th centuries, Spanish invasions and the spread of deadly diseases like smallpox, previously unknown in the Americas, caused kingdoms to collapse and populations to decline precipitously. But again, Maya communities and cultures persisted. More recently, 2012-ology stimulated interest in Maya civilization as a phenomenon of ancient mystery, a riddle ripe for rediscovery. Predicted by the Mayans, confirmed by science, ran one of the promotional blurbs for the movie 2012. Never before in history has a date been so significant to so many cultures, so many religions, scientists, and governments. The film did not take the topic too seriously, despite its high body count. It was Old Testament-style destruction served with a smile, as the New York Times put it. Yet while 2012 was more about the Hollywood genre of disaster movies than it was about Maya culture or ancient prophecies, the film nonetheless sought to capitalize on the widespread belief in this millennium's first decade that the ancient Maya had predicted the end of the world. That belief was rooted in the fear that the advanced astronomical knowledge of the ancient Maya had allowed them to calculate that the apocalypse would occur on the date 13.0.0.0.0 in their calendar, our December 21st, 2012. Although Mayanists insisted that the Maya had predicted no such thing, a veritable 2012-ology industry spread rapidly into the tourism and entertainment industries, spawning films, books, websites, and cartoons by the thousands, all capitalizing on and perpetuating an unease regarding secret Maya knowledge and its potentially momentous mysteries. The world did not end, of course, and neither have the Maya or the widespread fascination with their civilization. With Maya communities historically subdivided in so many ways, geographical, linguistic, and chronological, with their very identity as a single people the invention of Mayanists, but appropriated by many Mayas today, and with their civilization so often seen as fundamentally mysterious, the pursuit of what made the Maya is all the more important. Chapter 2. Maya Genesis. The question of when the Maya became the Maya, from the archaeological perspective, will likely always be debated, as new evidence is uncovered and old evidence reinterpreted. But it is safe to outline broadly the gradual birth of the civilization we call Maya. People began to settle the area around 9000 BCE. By 3000 BCE, maize farmers were clearing forest in the southern region, and in the second millennium BCE there is evidence of a widespread village culture gradually moving toward urbanism, as settlement became denser, for example, and public buildings such as ball courts became larger and more numerous. By the time of the first millennium BCE, if not before, the commonality and complexity of cultural practices across the Maya area, from art and architecture to agriculture and social structure, demonstrate that Maya civilization had been born. With the escalation of urbanism during these pre-classic millennia, artistic, architectural, and knowledge production became more sophisticated. For example, upright stone shafts or stelae were erected in prominent urban locations, featuring carved and brightly colored portraits of rulers. As hieroglyphic scripts developed, stelae also included texts, helping these stone canvases to act as signposts and backdrops to performances, parades, and other political rituals. The increasingly elaborate nature of architectural complexes, a plethora of platforms, palaces, and pyramids, was made possible by ever more hierarchical social organization. The ruler of the city-state was at the apex of that hierarchy, and below him, or on rare occasion her, were lesser elites or nobles, followed by a merchant and artisanal class. Finally, there were families of farmers, the commoner majority, and below them slaves. By the closing centuries of the pre-classic period, there were 6 or 7 layers to Maya society. So, how did the Maya themselves understand the genesis of their civilization? Like human societies the world over, the Maya did not share a common account of how the physical world and its inhabitants were created. In Maya art, architecture, and associated political organizations, tales of cosmogenesis were highly localized, all seeming to serve the political interests of each city-state's ruling elites. In many cases, Maya cities often proclaimed that the world and the deities responsible were created locally. No doubt a city's residents believed that the local patron deities were born in that city. Our knowledge of ancient Maya myth history, a complex blend of historical and mythological past events, comes from three primary kinds of evidentiary sources. Two predate European contact and one dates to the colonial period. The pre-Columbian sources come in the form of visual culture, such as painted ceramic vessels and walls, and hieroglyphic texts that adorn stelae, lintels, and the walls of monumental architectural features. Additionally, textual manuscripts from the colonial period, composed in various Mayan languages, contain detailed accounts of this ancient myth history. All these sources can be tricky to interpret, but when they can be colluded, they underpin a strong argument for how the Maya viewed the supernatural creation of their world. In their own words, by far the most detailed version of the Maya creation is found in the manuscript known as the Popol Vuh. Written in Quiche, one of highland Guatemala's Mayan languages, the manuscript survives in the early 21st century in Chicago's Newberry Library. Transcribed in 1701 or 1702 by a Dominican friar, Francisco Jimenez, the Popol Vuh was likely copied from an older Quiche Mayan text that was composed at some point in the early colonial period. That earlier manuscript was likely redacted from a pre-Columbian codex that told the tale in both hieroglyphic text and image, but unfortunately Jimenez's version of the saga did not retain the ancient visual material. The manuscript is divided roughly into three parts, perhaps reflecting its derivation from more than one pre-Columbian codex. Its three parts reveal the political function of what is essentially a religious text. The first part is cosmogonic. It details the creation of the earth and the birthing of the gods, all directed by a pair of elderly deities, Tepeo and Cucumats, labeled the Makers. These beings created the terrestrial world, light, and eventually all of its animal inhabitants. The gods then wished to be venerated, so they began the process of what would become the ultimate creative act, the production of human beings. It took several tries to get it right. In their first attempt, the gods modeled humanoid beings out of mud and water, but these creatures simply melted away when exposed to rain. Next, they tried wood, crafting human-like mannequins, and while these were impervious to the elements, they were unable to speak, and thus incapable of fulfilling their ritual obligations to the deities. They too were summarily destroyed, this time by a massive flood. The second section of the Popol Vuh is the lengthiest and best known. It details the adventurous exploits of the hero twins Hunahpu, one hunter, and Spalanque, jaguar deer. This portion begins a generation earlier, detailing the misadventures of the boy's father, Hunahpu, and his own twin brother, Vukub Hunahpu. This first set of twins were avid ball players. Their incessant bouncing of the heavy rubber ball on the ceiling of the underworld came to disturb and upset the lords of the underworld who resided below, a level of the Maya cosmos called Xibalba. The twins were summoned down to play ball with these underworld gods, and were eventually defeated. Hunahpu's head was severed and hung in a cornfield. The primary lord of the underworld had a beautiful daughter named Blood Moon, who heard about Hunahpu's severed head and wished to see the curiosity for herself. She sneaked into the cornfield where the head spoke to Blood Moon and spat into her palm, whereupon she found herself pregnant. Because pregnancy outside marriage was deemed socially improper, Blood Moon's father banished her to the terrestrial realm, sending his trusty owl to kill her. Instead, the owl let her go, fooling his master by returning with a ball of copal resin shaped in the form of a human heart to represent Blood Moon's vital organ. Blood Moon found her way to the home of Hunahpu, where she explained to his mother Shmukane that she was carrying her grandchildren, another set of boy twins. These children were born and grew up in the house of their grandmother, where their older half-brothers resided, another set of twins previously fathered by Hunahpu. The older brothers were notoriously cruel to their younger siblings, who eventually outwitted them, transforming the older brothers into spider monkeys. The hero twins' cunning and intelligence allowed them to manipulate their human and natural environments, but their true challenge came in their teen years, when they discovered their father and uncle's ball game equipment hidden in the rafters. Like their father and uncle, the hero twins became obsessed with the game, eventually catching the attention of the same lords of Xibalba who killed their father. Again, these twins were summoned by the lords and were forced to endure a series of trials, all aimed at extinguishing the young hero twins. Time and time again, the boys outwitted the underworld lords, primarily by drawing on their own natural intelligence and knowledge of the natural world. Ultimately, they defeated the lords of the underworld. The Popol Vuh's final section is the shortest of the three. It details the last and successful attempt of the Makers to create human beings. This time they were created from yellow and white cornmeal, and were therefore capable of speech, movement, sight, and thought, all the elements necessary for the proper veneration of the deities. There then immediately emerged the lineages that controlled the Quiché Maya during the late post-classic into the colonial period, and right up to the moment of the manuscript's transcription at the turn of the 18th century. This reflected an ancient Maya tradition of directly linking ruling elites to cosmogonic narratives, thereby validating their political control. Despite the mid-colonial period date of the extant Popol Vuh manuscript, an abundance of visual evidence suggests localized versions of this same tale circulated for at least 2 millennia. As early as the first millennium BCE, the Olmecs, whose civilization flourished west of the Maya area before and during the Maya pre-classic period, placed stone representations of twin boys in sites such as La Venta. A little later, about 300 BCE, artists at the site of Izapa, in Chiapas, carved stelae to visualize pivotal moments of the narrative later recorded in the 18th century. And finally, classic period painted ceramics provide an impressive corpus of related narrative scenes, produced throughout the Maya lowlands and beyond. A popularly discussed ceramic vessel represents such an episode from early in the adventures of the hero twins, Hunahpu's shooting of Vukub Kakwish, 7 Macaw. In one rendering of this event by an ancient Maya artist, we see the twins poised to shoot, blowguns protruding from their pursed lips. 7 Macaw is perched proudly, his resplendent feathers spread for all to see. According to the 18th century manuscript, this early deity had become too confident for his own good. He believed his bejeweled teeth and eyes marked him as an equal to the sun. Hunahpu was instructed to bring him back down to size, and did so by shooting him in the mouth, thereby knocking out his golden teeth. In the process, his lower jaw was shot off, forever explaining the atypical formation of the lower mandible of the macaw species. This singular episode, which was important enough to be rendered by a courtly artist on one of the most elite art forms, serves as an example for the larger social function of Maya mythology in ancient society. Typically, these anecdotes have a moralizing character. In this example, the lesson is not to prioritize one's individuality over the needs of the larger community. Additionally, these tales, in fashion similar to Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories of the late 19th century, enabled Maya people to easily explain the variation found in the natural world. Nearly 1,000 years earlier, during the apex of the classic period, Maya artists had similarly taken on the monumental recording of cosmogonic events, but utilizing an alternative approach and medium, the carving of stone hieroglyphic texts. Exemplified by a series of exceptional inscriptions from the center of Palenque, this technique involved the intricate carving from local basalt rock of hundreds of individual blocks of hieroglyphic text, arranged into panels. Examples of this form of recorded myth and history are scattered throughout the site, but are especially well preserved in temples commissioned and funded under the realm of Palenque's 13th ruler, Kinich Khan Bahlam, ruled 684 to 702. In choosing this technique to detail local myth history, Kinich Khan Bahlam was not attempting a break in regional practice. He was simply emulating the political strategies of his forebears. Following his father's death in 683 CE, Kinich Khan Bahlam embarked on an ambitious building program. The stunning result is known today as the Cross Group. Composed of 3 inward-facing mound temple structures, this complex was conceived as a unified whole, with the architectural style and associated artwork together projecting a particular vision of Kinich Khan Bahlam's rule. Atop each pyramid in Palenque, the typical temple form was laid out in stone, but within each temple was nestled an embedded secondary structure, a kind of interior sanctuary. These smaller spaces, the one in the Temple of the Cross is only 2 by 3 meters, housed large relief carvings embedded in the backmost wall. The carved panels include both text and image, the figurative representations displaying Kinich Khan Bahlam interacting with various ancestors. What concerns us here is the hieroglyphic texts that speak to the creation of the patron deities of Palenque. Archaeologists call them G1, G2, and G3, at the site of creation. The text labels the overall structure as his, G1's, sweat bath. In the Maya world, semi-subterranean sweat baths were used for a variety of medical and religious purposes, but perhaps most commonly to bring relief to women who were actively giving birth. Through this labeling, the structures and the sweat baths were thereby linked to divine birth and purification. The remainder of the hieroglyphic text provides a detailed genealogy of the Palenque dynasty, succinctly linking the city's human rulers to the lineage of the city's patron gods. Further classic period epigraphic evidence suggests that the Maya also maintained a distinct vision of how the physical world was established, an account that is slightly different than the one offered in the much later Popol Vuh. These glyphs speak of the setting up of the 3 hearthstones of creation at the starting date of the Maya calendrical system that scholars call the Long Count, August 11th, 3114 BCE. Finally, from the northern extreme of the Maya world, the Yucatan Peninsula, an additional account of creation exists, albeit not as lengthy or detailed as that in the Popol Vuh. 3 versions are extant in manuscripts known as the Books of Chilam Balam, the Jaguar Priest. These books were written alphabetically in Yucatec Maya in the colonial period, initially transcribed by Maya notaries from hieroglyphic books before they were lost or destroyed by Spanish priests. Copies differed from town to town, increasingly so over the colonial centuries, reflecting local lore, regional historical memory, the intrusion of Christian ideas, and varying interests in such topics as ancient prophecies, calendrical knowledge, and herbal cures. The 3 books of Chilam Balam that contain accounts of the Maya cosmogenesis are in late colonial copies from the Yucatec towns of Chumayel, Tizimin, and Mani. The current world order, according to the Jaguar Priest, was upset by a divine battle waged between 2 primary gods of the post-classic pantheon, Oxlahuntiku, he of the 13 gods, and Bolontiku, he of the 9 gods. These deities waged an epic battle against one another, and eventually Bolontiku emerged victorious, having ripped Oxlahuntiku to shreds and deposited his body throughout the world. Thereafter, a torrential flood wiped out all previous existence. As befitted Maya understandings of the life cycle, this destruction ushered in a new era of creation. 5 world trees were planted to raise the new sky, 1 in each of the cardinal directions, with a single tree in the center of the cosmos holding aloft the celestial realm. The archaeological evidence. Although the ancient Maya placed the creation of their society many millennia before our calendar's year 0, scholars recognize the emergence of a distinctly Maya culture during the Middle Preclassic period. This does not mean that humans had not inhabited the region previously. Excavations at sites such as Cuello have located archaeological features such as hard clay floors and post holes that date around 1200 BCE, and other sites, Nakbe and Soconusco, for example, may be as old as 2000 BCE. In this very early period, referred to as the Archaic, people in the Maya region likely lived in nomadic bands that visited seasonal camps to procure food. The Archaic period is typically dated from 8000 BCE, but there were almost certainly people, pre-Mayas if you like, living in and moving through the future Maya area for millennia before that. Traditionally, the early Preclassic has been determined as the moment when the first evidence of domesticated agriculture appears in the archaeological record, specifically the cultivation of corn. As with other human societies the world over, this agricultural development allowed for densely settled communities, and eventually the emergence of social hierarchy. The early discovery of nixtamalization, from the Nahuatl term nextamali, derived from nextli, cinders or ash, and tamali, tamale, was also a boost to Mesoamerican societies. Mayas and other Mesoamericans began to soak and cook unhulled corn in an alkaline solution made from lime water or lye. In addition to making the corn tastier and easier to grind, this process allowed corn to provide dietary niacin, which in combination with amino acids from cultivated beans ensured a staple diet composed of a complete protein set. Thus, by the early Preclassic, settled villages peppered some regions of the Maya world. In the area around Soconusco, for example, where evidence for maize cultivation dates to circa 1700 BCE. Some scholars refer to these populations as the Mocaya. However, the highlands of Guatemala and the entirety of the lowlands, the Petén and the Yucatan, do not show as much evidence for this early cultural development. Archaeologists have yet to determine exactly why this is the case. Regardless, the early Preclassic villages of the Guatemalan and Chiapas coastal plains preserve remains of pole and thatch houses and a defined ceramic tradition, the Bara phase of 1900 to 1700 BCE. Mortuary practices begin to exhibit social differentiation in terms of included grave goods.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?